Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be home here again, back in Baltimore. It's really the roots of so much of what Kath and myself and ultimately our kids have done in life, because it's different. It's different as you step out into different areas. But at University of Maryland is special because my wife also has a master's from the University of Maryland in the clinical social work. And so the social work team out there, she was one of you. And so I would say to you, in life, there are no ordinary moments. Most of us never really recognize the most significant moments of our lives when they're happening. And that's just the truth. And life is a contact sport. You'll find out that you meet somebody who then knows somebody who introduces you to somebody else. Any businessman knows how important leads are in life. That you get introduced to people who have different series of assets and talents that you do. Now, I knew I always knew that, but I don't remember exactly where I learned it until I reflected back. Now, I grew up the second oldest of 12 kids, good Irish Catholic family in New Jersey. And so any family that had 12 kids had a parish priest. And as I reflect back, it was Father O'Brien in that Epiphany Parish in Cliffside Park, New Jersey, that told me how important leads were. And he told me the story of a young man who came into the confessional one Saturday afternoon, Irish as he was, and he said, "Bless me, Father." He says, "I've been impure with a young lady." He says, "Patrick O'Malley, is that you?" He says, "Yes, it is, Father." He says, "Before I give you a penance, you tell me who the young lady was." He said, "Father, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to destroy the lady's reputation." He says, "Was it Susie O'Malley?" "Father, I'm not going to tell you." "Was it Mary McGillicuddy?" "Father, I'm not going to tell you." "Was it Maureen O'Sullivan?" "Father, for the last time, I'm not going to tell you the lady's name." He says, "I admire your steadfastness. You go off, you say a rosary, you'd be a good fellow." He said, "Thank you, Father." He gets out of the confessional, he goes over the pew, his buddy kind of weasels over to him. He says, "What did he give you?" He said, "3 good leads." So keep your eyes open. You don't know what's happening next. Bottom line is I spent way too many years in school. I got out of high school, went to Mount St. Mary's College. A good buddy of mine there said, "Why don't you go to dental school? You have some pretty good grades. You probably can get in after 3 years of college." That seemed like a good idea to me. I hated school. And so I went to the dental school and had a great time here. Met a lot of wonderful people. One of them I met was a kid who was right next to me, Steve Mock. All that time he was planning on going to medical school. In our senior year, we had gotten married, Kathy and I. Our first child was on the way. She went into a false labor. We were back up in New Jersey. She was drunk on an alcohol trip in the hospital. I went down to see my dad, who was a doctor in the hospital, and 2 people came up to me and said, "Bill, what are you doing?" And I told them, "What are you going to do?" I was interviewing for oral surgery programs up in New York. He said, "You know, maybe you ought to think about going to medical school because maybe you won't be able to do all the surgery that you want to do." One of them was an oral surgeon, so I took that pretty seriously, and I went back, and this guy, Steve Mock, in my dental school class, knew you could get a year off medical school. So not being too overly bright, I didn't add up the years properly, and I said to Kath on the way back, I said, "What do you think, 3 years oral surgery residency, 3 years medical school?" I didn't even think about the 7 years of residency after medical school. And she said, "Sure, if you want to, that's fine by me." And so, boom. Next week, I was interviewing down at GW, got accepted my sophomore year of medical school, and the journey just continued. But I think every one of those moments was wonderful. I don't regret or look badly back on any of those things that happened because there was a pathway for us to see a world that we wouldn't have seen with just the usual things that we went through. And I think that it all ultimately led to a trip to Paris with 4 kids, 5 and under, and a 5th on the way. It led to a trip in Zurich, Switzerland with a guy named Obergazer who started one of the big dental procedures moving the lower jaw around with 3 kids, 3 and under. And all the while, we were learning from people that we had an incredible opportunity to learn from. And it was the amalgamation of all those different cultures and people that really led us to be open to what in 1982 became an opportunity to go to the Philippines. Now, I have to be honest with you, I went for very selfish reasons. There was nothing altruistic about it. I wanted to become better at taking care of kids with cleft lips and cleft palates. Here was an opportunity to operate on a large number of kids in a very short period of time. My wife was much more altruistic than I. We actually brought our 13-year-old daughter, the oldest of our 5 children, with us at the time, and she became our scrub nurse. And it was in that time when 300 people came in and we could only take care of 40 that really put the ceiling on it all. Because every parent was tugging at our sleeve and begging us to take care of their child. We could only take care of 40, turned over 250 away. And I will never, ever forget that moment because there was nobody, I mean nobody, in that area who was ever going to take care of those kids. And I think that the final culmination of it all was as we went to walk out the next day, there was a lady who came up to us with her daughter at her side, maybe about 8 years old, and her daughter had a big hole in her lip, and this lady comes in with a ripe basket of bananas cradled in her arms. And she said, I would like to give these bananas to you. It's the only thing I can afford, but I want to say thank you for trying to take care of my daughter, even though we had turned her daughter away. This poor lady had tears coming down her cheeks. We had tears coming down our cheeks. And all we could potentially say was maybe next year, but there was no next year. The group we were with wasn't planning on going back. And it was at that moment, I think, that Kath and I said, why don't we get together a group of our friends and we'll go back and we'll take care of those 250 kids. The world will be wonderful, our guilt will be ridden, and then we'll go back to our lives as usual. And that's exactly how Operation Smile began. Reason leads to conclusions. It's emotion that leads to action. In school, we're taught to think analytically about an awful lot of things, but unless we're willing to listen to our heart and our intuitive belief systems, unless we put all of those years of education, not just these past 2 to 4 years, but all of our years of education into it, then the decisions we make won't be as productive. So we made the decision to go back at that one moment in time, not having the foggiest idea how we were going to raise the money to do it. Now, 35 years later, we're in 60 countries. We've operated on over 400,000 kids. There are 13,000 volunteers who come with us. Dentists, pediatricians, social workers, psychologists, speech therapists, surgeons, anesthesiologists. It's incredible. All donating their time to help somebody who may never ever know their name, but will never ever forget their kindness. This year, we send out 160 teams somewhere in our world to go for 2 weeks to take care of kids. Just had a team get back from Madagascar. 700 kids showed up for potential surgery. Took care of 150. There's still a lot to do there. So I say this to you because the world is out there for you. There is so much need that exists in our world, and you have so much talent that find ways to explore it a little bit, because it won't hurt you a bit. In fact, it'll help you phenomenally. Knowledge and science are crucial, of course, but knowledge alone will not suffice. It has no heart. No amount of knowledge will ever nurture or sustain your spirit. Will never provide you ultimate happiness or peace. It's only when our knowledge is infused with intense passion and energy that knowledge has a chance to come to life. Find that place in your soul where that knowledge has a chance to grow, where you get to utilize it for people who need you, who may never know your name, but will never ever forget your kindness. Let me just tell you one last story of an experience I had in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. was a number of years ago, and we went into the hospital, King Lion Hospital in Addis Ababa. It was a place where literally people came to die. There were about 1,000 patients that showed up hoping for surgery. And it was on the second floor of that hospital that I met 3 young men, one 26, one 17, and one 7. Those 3 men were from a family of 6 kids whose mother had died the year before. The father remarried and ostracized the 17-year-old and the 7-year-old because they had cleft lips and cleft palates, and he felt that they were a curse on the family. The 26-year-old brother took them under his wing and brought them in to see us. The 7-year-old still had his spirit. He could still look at you and smile, but the 17-year-old had totally lost it. He wore a baseball cap, pulled over his eyes, a mask over his face. When I saw him on the second floor of that hospital, I reached out my hand and I said, "Would you shake my hand?" And he limply shook my hand. I said, "No, squeeze my hand if you would." He squeezed it a little bit harder. I said, "No, really squeeze my hand." He finally did. I said, "Then would you look me in the eyes?" And as he went to look me in the eyes, his hand went limp again. I said, "No, let's do this. Let's look me in the eyes and squeeze my hand, both at the same time." And finally, after about 30 seconds, we got that down. I then said to him, "I can promise you that tomorrow we can fix your lip. What I can't promise you is that we can heal your spirit. You've got to do that." So let's start looking at things differently. Let's start recognizing that your cleft lip is your gift. You've been given the gift of a cleft lip. Because forever, you'll be more sensitive to the needs of people with problems in your country than most people will ever understand that. So let's make a deal. I'll promise you we'll fix your lip. If you promise me, you'll use your gift for the rest of your life to help other people. Every single one of us in this auditorium has a gift. They're all different. But our challenge is, how do we use our gift for the rest of our lives to help other people? And I believe very strongly that if you figure out what that gift is that you're sharing, that your life will be whole and productive in a way that you can't even imagine. But we got to be humble enough to realize what are our strengths and what are our weaknesses. Take your strength and go for it. And so I would say to each of you what I've learned over these 35 years. And that now 35 years later, there are thousands of people that we've met who are all people should be. Selfless, kind, warm-hearted, full of generous impulses. It's these people who change our world. Without them, there would be no Operation Smile. It's difficult to put in only a few words, but these individuals seek neither recognition nor reward, but continue year after year to afford the healing of their sympathies and a home in their heart for the world's neglected and forgotten children. So when I say God bless you, you faithful friends of mankind, I mean bless you. For there's no one here among us who has known the compassion of a newfound friend's embrace or the gentle touch of a stranger's hand, but in their hearts would add, amen.